get to the level in your career where you've got the most experience that you've ever had in your whole life. And now, for the first time, you're coming in second, or, not even placing. And this is not the first time that I've heard this from executives. I mean, it's certainly been more prevalent lately, but I've heard this a lot in my career. It used to amaze me that, in times when the economy would take dives, there were certain people that were always in demand no matter what. They had no problem getting offers. There were times when the market was good, and yet people would be very confused that they've had the most experience that they've had their whole life and they couldn't get there. And that's when I really started to dig into the topic to figure out what exactly was going on. And I would talk to my clients, and I talk to the companies, and I get debriefings, and I get debriefing from the candidate side, and there was a lot of discrepancy. So that's when I really started trying to ease some of the pain and create some clarity around why these things happen. And I feel sometimes like there's this big giant curtain behind what actually happens in your career when you're an executive, what changes. And there's a lot of things about the job search and about your career that do change when you become an executive. I think the best place to start is probably the job opportunity bell curve. And this is not something that they teach you when you're getting your degrees or your advanced degrees. It's not something they teach you in corporate America. You'll just be lucky if you can observe that this actually happens. And what happens is when you come out of school and everybody's not really got much experience, but they've got lots of drive and energy, and they've got a good education, that's kind of a level playing field. And then you get to the stage in your career where you've got the work experience necessary to know how to do the job, but you're still at that worker bee area. And if you look at the shape of a pyramid, you see that that's a level of the pyramid where there are still lots of seats, lots of spots in the org chart, if you will. And so there is a lot of opportunity out there. And a lot of opportunity for people who want to actually do the work. A lot of times these are people that, aren't really as concerned about their quality of life issues. So they'll work even harder. And then what happens as you approach the top of the pyramid, you get to the downside, once again, of the job opportunity bell curve, which means at the top of the pyramid, there's less positions. And what happens is because there's less positions, there's not enough seats for everybody that want them. And the positions come along fewer and farther in between. And so what that creates is a scenario where the supply and the demand is not in your favor. So whenever the supply and demand is not in your favor, or you're taking a product to market that the supply and demand is not in your favor, a very crowded market, there has to be something that stands out very clearly, not necessarily in the product description or the experience or the story behind it, but rather the ROI story, the what's in it for them. And the bigger the position, the more important the problems are that they need to solve. But what happens is the stakeholders, when you get to this level, the stakeholders don't necessarily do what you do. So I like to split it into two parts of the org chart. There's the 97%, which those are the people who report into people who do what you do. As I did accounting and finance headhunting. So if I was working with a CFO that was filling a controller position, they knew very clearly what product description they needed. They could list me a set of skills and experiences that were necessary, and those are usually who they'd hire. And in the 3%, which would be like a CEO hiring a CFO, let's say, they don't do what you do, but that's why they need you. So the audience is very different. This audience that you're marketing yourself to in the 3%, and primarily all ExecuNet does is advice for the 3%. It doesn't have to be C-level. It could be a manager title in some companies. But basically, you've reached the stage of compensation. Usually that's over 200K, where that's a pretty big spend, and you better have a business case behind it, not just a, wow, I really like the guy. And it's solving a very important problem or getting them to an important stage that they need to get to. So they don't necessarily know which skills and experiences are the absolute right fit for the job, but they do know for sure what needs to happen. So when you're marketing yourself in the 97%, you've got an audience that's pretty much like, if you're in the tech world, it's like engineers talking to engineers. They're speaking the same language, and they know why if you had this experience followed by that experience, you are clearly better fit for the role. When you're in the 3%, we are on a whole new level. So knowing that and knowing how these audiences are so different, what we do is we get to when we're going out there and marketing ourselves, okay, I'm the product, I get it now. And I need to market to an audience. How do I go about doing that? So we have to break this down in terms of elements that you can control versus elements that you can't. As you know, when you take a product to market, you have two different options. You can have a product that, you know, you see the market need out there, and you can develop a product for that market need. And other times you have a product that solves a particular problem, and that's set in stone, and you have to go find that market. So I think you probably are under this correct assumption right now that you're the second type. You're the type that's had a past, and that is that your past is set in stone. So now what we have to do is figure out the strategy to get you in the door.